Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Gilda Hilaire, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager leading Marketing Cloud Trailblazer program. Today kicks off AMPscript Basics Part 1. We have Susanna and Jenna leading the session. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will try to address these during the presentation and at the end. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Susanna and Jenna. Take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. First, we will do a quick introduction. So my name is Susanna. I am a Salesforce Marketing Cloud developer and a solution architect. I've been working with Marketing Cloud for almost 6 years. I am also a blogger, and my blog sfmarketing.cloud has been created for marketers and developers interested in learning more about the technical aspects of working with Marketing Cloud. I am really excited to be delivering this AMPscript course together with Jenna, and I hope you'll be able to get a jump start on writing your first script today.
And hi, I'm Jenna Matson. I am a Senior Salesforce Marketing Cloud Engineer at DEG Digital. I am also a social admin at howtosfmc.com and a marketing champion for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I've been writing AMPscript for about 8 years now, it's my love language, and I hope you walk away from today's course falling in love with it also. Okay, so first off, we're going to kick off with just some resources for you to go to learn more about Marketing Cloud once you're done with today's class. We will be passing out this deck later on today, so please look for the links inside of it. The first one we have is a Trailhead module for you to go to and learn. It takes about 40 minutes to complete. It is pretty comprehensive and will have you writing AMPscript by the time you complete it. So I do recommend you take a look at that. Next, we have the AMPscript guide, which is written by Elliot Harper and Adam Spriggs. It is a comprehensive guide to every function and functionality that's available for you in AMPscript with tips and tricks. I do recommend a subscription to that. Next, we have a couple blog listings for you. One is written by Gilda Hilaire, who is our lovely host for today's call. She has written a nice little recap of all the places you can go and find information on AMPscript, as well as we have a listing of blogs on our How to SFMC website as well for you to go to. And if you need personal one-on-one help, there are plenty of ways to reach out to those in the community that have been writing AMPscript for a long time. We're happy to help you, including Susanna and myself. We can be found on the Email Geek Slack channels or in Salesforce Stack Exchange. Also, you can reach out to any MVP and marketing champion. We are always happy to communicate with you and help you get over your hurdles.
Okay, so let's start with what is AMPscript. So AMPscript is the proprietary scripting language for Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which means that you cannot use it anywhere else apart from Marketing Cloud. Inside Marketing Cloud, AMPscript can be used within HTML emails, text messages, landing pages, SMS messages, and push notifications in Mobile Studio. It was developed by ExactTarget in 2008, and for those of you who don't know the full history, ExactTarget was the original name of Salesforce Marketing Cloud before it was acquired by Salesforce in 2014. AMP in AMPscript doesn't actually stand for anything. It's not an acronym, and it should not be confused with Google's accelerated mobile pages. AMPscript is a server-side scripting language, which means that the code is interpreted on the server side before the HTML is loaded. And since AMPscript has a very simple syntax and all the functions are predefined, it's fairly quick and easy to learn. So anyone who is able to write basic HTML or use Excel functions should be able to learn AMPscript. Now, speaking of Excel, AMPscript syntax is very similar to the one of the basic or Visual Basic programming languages, which can be used in Excel. And AMPscript functions are very similar to Excel functions. So if we look at this example here, on the left-hand side, there is an AMPscript function called proper case. On the right-hand side, you have an Excel function called proper. So both those functions take some input. In the case of the AMPscript function, it takes the input of the name, which is astronomical, and changes the case into a proper case. That means it capitalizes every first letter of every word in the string. It's very similar to how the proper function works in Excel. So again, it also takes the input from cell A2, and the output gives a capitalized first letter of every word. So output of both those functions will be the same.
And my favorite example of, speaking of delimiters, or not delimiters, excuse me, speaking of Excel functions, my favorite example of the comparisons between Excel and AMPscript is the concat function for concatenating two string values or two values together. They are exactly the same in Excel and in AMPscript. All right, so for the AMPscript language elements, just like in every scripting language and most computer languages, processing languages, you need to open and close, or tell the computer or tell the machines where to open and close your script or your code. There are two types of delimiters in AMPscript. Both start with %%. The first one is for inline, delimiting inline AMPscript. And as you can see on the right-hand side there, we have AMPscript inline delimiters on the bottom there. I'm sorry, I've switched those. But yeah, we have AMPscript delimiters on the bottom where you can see the % equals opens to a variable, and that variable has been set above being email. It's closed with the equals % on the opposite side. The nice thing about AMPscript, the delimiters are pretty user-friendly, understandable. They always open and close with the same syntax, basically. The AMPscript block delimiters are defined with a % bracket and then closed with a close bracket %. And that allows you to enter in entire blocks of script so that they can be processed at one time rather than using inline functionality only. Both work and are as performant. It is easier to use conditional formatting, or in my opinion, it's easier to write a conditional statement inside of a block delimiter rather than trying to compress it with an inline tag. You can also write comments in AMPscript, very much like SQL or CSS comments. They are delimited by a / and a asterisk, and closed by another asterisk and a /. You can also use just basic HTML comments in your HTML as seen below if you're using inline statements. It is always best to comment your code and make it readable for others that come behind you. All right, let's talk a bit about personalization strings here. Personalization strings, first off, are not AMPscript. Personalization strings are predefined tags that are mapped to specific platform attributes that can be used in emails, SMS messages, or in cloud pages without accessing AMPscript. You can use personalization strings in line with AMPscript or in your AMPscript to easily access those system attributes. And we've provided some examples for you here. Personalization strings, whenever written in line, they are delimited, very similar to AMPscript with %% on either side of the personalization string. When used in AMPscript, you do not have to use these delimiters. AMPscript will recognize the personalization strings as they are reserved by the system.
So now we will talk about variables. So like other scripting languages, AMPscript supports variables, which give you a convenient way to set a function or a value once and reuse it in your code. It's very similar to using CSS style sheets, where you can define a style once and reuse it throughout your entire HTML. In AMPscript, variable names always start with the @ symbol and include at least one other letter, number, or underscore. Variable names cannot contain any spaces or delimiters. You declare variables with the var keyword, followed by one or more comma delimited variable names. So basically, you should first list all the variables you are going to use in your script before you go ahead and use them. After you declare your variables, you can set them, and you set variables using the set keyword and a syntax which comprises of the following elements. So we have the set keyword, we have the variable name, which starts with the @ symbol. We have a single equals symbol. And then to set the actual value of the variable, you can use a personalization string, a constant, or an AMPscript function. So here in this example, we have 3 variables, which are declared using the var keyword. We have var member ID, first name, and proper case name. We are setting the first variable value member ID to the subscriber key, which is a personalization string. The second variable, first name, will be set to a literal value. This is a string with the word astro. And the last one here, proper case name, will be using a function. So basically, those are the different options that you have here. And once a variable is set, its scope is set globally, which means that you can use the variable anywhere further in your code. So here are some best practices for declaring variables. So you should really declare all your variables in the beginning using the var keyword, followed by a list of comma delimited variable names, like you can see here in this first example, or you could declare them one by one inside of the script by using the var keyword followed by the variable name. So we are declaring a variable and then we are setting the value for the variable. Marketing Cloud doesn't enforce declaring variables, which means that your script will work even if you don't declare all your variables, but declaring them has certain benefits. So first of all, it adds an entry to the internal variable dictionary using the variable name as the key and setting the variable value to null. And second of all, listing all your variables can help a great deal with debugging your code. When it comes to the naming convention, you should consider naming your variables in a human-friendly way so that your code is easy to interpret by someone who's reading it. So for example, if you're using a variable called member ID, like the one that we have here, use the full name member ID or MID or something that's later recognizable, because if you use an acronym like MI, it will be then hard to figure out what this variable represents. And the last point here, AMPscript variables are not case sensitive, which means that they do not need to be typed with a consistent capitalization of letters. So whether you type it like this and then you type it like this with all lowercase, it will still be correctly recognized by AMPscript. But as a best practice, I would recommend using the camel case, which is the most human-friendly way to read.
That also, I'm going to add in a little bit of note here for the readability thing. It's always good to notice how everything's indented nicely and the color coding and the camel case. That helps for people with who have accessibility issues like dyslexia, be able to read and define your code more easily. It's always good to consider who's going to be coming behind you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, so variables can be changed after they have been set. So here in this example, we are setting the promotion end date to the 30th of June. And then inside of this conditional statement for members whose status is VIP, we are extending the date by adding 7 more days. So for anyone who's not a VIP, this value will be used. But if the code finds someone who's a VIP, then they will see a different promotion end date. You can also use conditional statements to set different values for your variables. So in this example, we have an attribute called points, and based on the number of points, if it's greater than 1000, we are setting the member status to VIP. And if it's less than 1000 points, then we are setting the member status to regular. So now we will talk about the functions. So AMPscript uses a set of 148 predefined functions, which are mostly focused on displaying, transforming, and storing marketing data and content. You cannot define your own functions like in other scripting languages, like you can do, for example, in JavaScript. AMPscript functions work in a similar way to Excel functions, and this means that there are certain parameters which are set for a function, they are interpreted, and in return they output a value. So again, we will use the astronomical example here. You have a proper case function which takes an input. In this case, the input is a string, astronomical. It interprets it and it returns a value, which you can see here. The output is astronomical, written with capitalized first letters. So now a few words about best practices for using AMPscript functions. Just as variable names, function names in AMPscript are not case sensitive. So for Marketing Cloud, it doesn't matter if you write the function name with all caps or lowercase, or if you use any other variation. Again, camel case is the most human-friendly and as Jenna said, accessible to read. AMPscript also allows nesting functions inside one another. So this is basically the same script. This version is the version with nested functions, and this is just the regular version. So as you can see, there are certain benefits for nesting functions inside one another. It definitely uses less variables. So here you have only 2 variables, at rows and at order item. And it has less lines of code. So basically here the whole code is written in 4 lines. it also has some cons, and especially for beginners, it might be harder to troubleshoot and to read. So for anyone who's learning AMPscript, I would recommend writing out all your variables and functions separately, and then when you get more proficient, you can start using nested functions. And here just a small example on documentation and how to work with the documentation. So this example comes from the AMPscript guide, which I highly recommend. It's the best resource for all the AMPscript functions. So this is an example of the lookup function. You can see here that this is the definition. This function returns the value of a single column from a data extension. And the most important part of the function is this table here with all the arguments. So basically, when you start using AMPscript functions, you always need to pay attention to what arguments are required for the function to work and in which order they need to be written. So when you want to create a lookup function, you need to list at least 4 required arguments. The first one here is the name of the data extension from which a value should be returned. The second one after that is the name of the column from which to return a value. The third one is the name of the column that identifies the row to retrieve. And the last one is the value that identifies the row to retrieve. So now when we look at this example here, you see that the lookup value is the subscriber key of the subscriber that you're sending this email to. So for if the subscriber key of the subscriber who you're sending this to matches the subscriber key in the data extension is called subscribers.de, it will return the email address of that subscriber. So always pay attention to how many arguments are required and make sure to list them all inside of your function. Yeah.
It's very helpful to learn how to read the documentation. I think it takes some people years to really understand how to read. It's like stereo instructions. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about comparison operators now, and